gentlemen, and welcome to the final FQMS webinar of this series, Celebrating Gaza. My name is Yasmin Tabbakh, and I'm one of the new FQMS trustees, having started at the beginning of this year. I have been a supporter of FQMS for longer, however, and some of you may remember that I co-hosted last year's wonderful annual gala dinner. I would like to start off by saying a special thank you to Dalal Abu Amne, who sang the beautiful song you heard just now called Al-Fuad Al-Mu'adhab, or The Tormented Heart. We will be hearing more from her a little later on in the evening. This evening's webinar focuses on celebrating Gaza, celebrating its people, its history, and its culture. In the run-up to the webinar, I found myself reading a lot about the lives of those who live or have lived on this strip of land. And what struck me more than anything was not just the resilience of those living under siege, but how much they've continued to flourish, inspire, and excel in all that they do, even in the most difficult of circumstances. One particular article about Gaza's prominent but exiled poet, Mu'in Bsiso, quoted, "The spirit of Gaza is like the spirit of Mu'in Bsiso, beautiful, poetic, tortured, strong, undying, and loving, and although confined by ever-shrinking spaces, always resisting and flourishing." We have an excellent lineup for you this evening. Firstly, we will be hearing from the chairman of FQMS, Khalid Dawas, and then we have a short talk from the Palestinian ambassador to the United Kingdom, Sam Zumlot. We will then hear talks from two renowned surgeons who have worked in Gaza and will provide their experience on their time there, Dr Ghassan Abu-Sittah and Mr David Nott. Following that, the celebrated comedian Imran Yusuf will entertain us. And then to finish the evening, we will chat with Dr Fadel Naim and Dr Anwar Al-Shaikh Khalil, the Dean and Sub-Dean of the Islamic University of Gaza. We will also hear from medical students who have graduated or currently studying in Gaza. There will also be the opportunity to ask them all questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll now pass you on to Khalid, Chairman of FQMS.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you, Rita. Thank you, lecturer. Thank you, Rawia. This is the team of the trustees, as well as Rita, who've organized and delivered the program today. And I'm sure you will enjoy it with me. The program today is you will find very interesting and also very informative. It's about an hour and a half long. And before I go any further, though, I'd like to welcome Dr. Hussam Zumlot, the ambassador in the UK. Hussam is not just a supporter of FQMS and anything Palestinian, but also a friend of all of ours. And I'd like to invite you, Hussam, to unmute yourself, and you are now able to speak. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Khalid, and my friends, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished professionals. Good evening, everyone. It is absolutely a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. Thank you, Dr. Khalid Dawas, trustees of the FQMS, the founders, and I see my good friend, Professor Colin Green, and many others, both for your invitation to me to speak here today, and also for your invaluable efforts over the years and the decades. Al-Quds Foundation for Medical Schools in Palestine, as Khalid has just said, is very dear to my heart and our hearts. The Palestinian people has over the years done great work in Palestine, educating our medical professionals and supporting our medical schools and the medical sector in general. This is always important, but right now it is absolutely crucial. Like the rest of the world, the Palestinian people is suffering a global pandemic, unlike the rest of the world. However, we are doing so while living under a belligerent and hostile military occupation, which is restricting our ability. Nowhere is this felt more than the beloved Gaza, where I was born, and I must say Khalid was born, or at least comes from, which has been under an inhumane siege for nearly 15 years. I have relatives, friends, family, classmates from the old days, and the suffering is unbearable, and the resilience is unmatched. This is unacceptable by any standards, and the world stands condemned for its inaction so far. Not just over Gaza, all over the West Bank, the situation is absolutely bleak I don't want to go into it in details. Today, we just want to focus on the fact that while the world has stood by the Palestinian people, and you, our dear close friends and supporters, has stood strong over the years, we remain steadfast and focused on the road ahead. What we can do is to prepare, we can educate, and we can strengthen ourselves, our resolute, our steadfastness, our perseverance, and this is exactly what Al-Quds Foundation is all about. The work of the foundation is about strengthening our medical sector and to withstand not just the normal pressure any medical sector comes under, and the whole world is under pressure, but also to withstand the pressure of these extraordinary times we are witnessing as we speak, and also the extra normal pressures the Palestinian health sector faces, pressures of the occupation, the deprivation, the isolation, the belligerence that we are witnessing in the occupied territories. None, in my opinion, none has done so better for so long than the Al-Quds University, I'm sorry, Al-Quds Foundation. You have been with us for our first medical school at Al-Quds University, with 3 more now, after these years, with 3 more recognized medical schools across the occupied territory, from Gaza to Nablus. Yours, my friends, is the kind of capacity building that will enable us not just to cope, but to thrive. And one day, these efforts will culminate in a strong and proud independent sovereign state of Palestine, a robust, I must say, a robust health sector with its own capacity, its own expertise, and available to all the Palestinian people, forms part of the backbone of a healthy state we aspire to. We are not just aspiring for a state, but we are aspiring for a healthy state. We are building that state with our blood, sweat, and tears, and you are providing crucial help at a crucial time, my friends. We owe you and those who support you a profound debt of gratitude. So allow me, on behalf of the Palestinian leadership, on behalf of the Palestinian people, allow me to express our gratitude for those efforts and this vital work. Thank you very much.
Hussam, thank you for your very kind words, and it's very good to see you as always. Hopefully, our promised walk with some falafel sandwiches will materialize very soon. What I'd like to tell you about today is another part of what FQMS has been doing over many years. So in the last 2 webinars, I introduced you initially to an overview, and then we talked about one of our programs, which is a postgraduate training program. And I will have a different focus today just to tell you and inform you about what we do and how we do it. So when we met many months ago, in fact in October, as a group of trustees to plan the strategy for our fundraising for this year, we were in 2 minds. So there were, in fact, more than 2 minds. There were those who advocated perhaps holding out to see whether we can hold a face-to-face or an in-person event like we normally do. We discussed whether we should cancel the event altogether. We discussed having webinars or a hybrid of those, webinars plus a face-to-face event. The realities of life really force us into what we have now, and we're actually very happy with the way things have turned out. But of course, we had to temper our ambitions, change our priorities, and alter our expectations. And those of you who attended the first webinar about Al-Quds heard me say that our target was £65,000. At the second event, I was a bit more vague, and I talked about having a target of £15,000 more. The reason I was so vague was actually that we were very delighted with the response we've got from you, our supporters, and from donors. And we've now exceeded £100,000. Now, what that means is not that we have extra credit or extra money that we can keep aside, but in fact, it means that we can be more ambitious about the project that we can fund this year as FQMS within the medical schools in Palestine. And that is really thanks to every one of you, those who donated £10 and those who donated up to £20,000. And I mentioned, by virtue of their great impact on our ability to fund these large segments of our work, only a few names who just illustrate really that these are long-term supporters of ours. And I would like to mention particularly Dalia Salam Rishani, Ghalia and Omar Qattan, David Shav, Sawsan Al-Asfari, and Hani Al-Qattani. And as I say, this is not to diminish anybody else's contributions, but really this is just because their contributions have made a really big impact and have allowed us to continue with our ambitious plans for this year in a way that we did not expect at the outset. So I'll give you an idea, for example, about our budget. And we've learned a lot during these webinars. Slides don't work, as we discovered earlier on today and last time. So I'm going to talk you through this. And I usually like to use slides just because I think, for me anyway, the visual image sticks with me much easier. So we have a budget of about £115,000 for next year for the projects that we are funding primarily from this kind of event. And as I say, this is expanded as a result of the successful campaign that we've had and your very generous support. The student bursaries we have expanded because we've taken away from the medical electives that students can't, as a result of COVID, can't travel this year. So we've doubled up the student bursaries. These are bursaries, these are funds provided to medical students in all 4 medical schools for those who are excelling academically but have debts that they have to pay to the universities. As you may know, the universities are not free for the students, and they all have to pay their fees. Nobody, or very few people in Palestine, are flush with enough money to say that they can comfortably pay their university fees. So our student bursary fund is about £50,000, 50. We also have a transport project in Gaza, which is specific to the Islamic University of Gaza, and that is to allow the students to travel from all parts of Gaza, which is small, but nevertheless does involve taxi transport or bus transport. And that itself will cost us about £15,000 for the year. We also provide funding for accommodation for students at Al-Quds University. These are students who do not have a teaching hospital and therefore have to travel to Hebron, Al-Khalil, to Ramallah, to other parts of the West Bank to continue their clinical training. And again, this is a vital part of their training. Without clinical training, you don't get doctors. And this will cost us about £25,000. And then we've also had a new project which we started last year with your generous support, which is to support and pay for teaching fellows within the medical schools. And these doctors are paid to not just be doctors, but also to train the medical students and contribute in a large way to the curriculum that they receive. And as I said, we've had to, well, the realities of life this year means that we are not going to be supporting the medical elective program, which is a big disappointment because this is a program which allows students to travel overseas, leave Gaza or the West Bank sometimes for the first time in their lives to see what it's like living outside in places where you don't need your passport to go from one town to the other. And we've also had to cut down on support for teaching trips. So one of our big groups of supported doctors from Oxford go every year to Gaza and deliver bedside teaching, which is very highly rated and very highly sought after from the medical students, both from Al-Azhar and from the Islamic University. Now, I want to tell you about one of our most special partnerships that we have. And this is one that we conduct with the wonderful team from the Madrina Trust. Since 2013, the program has enabled FQMS to select students with the help of the medical school deans and the team from the medical school to select students, again, who are excelling but are in exceptional financial need. As a result, we have had, since between 2013 and 2019, we've had 23 students. 7 have graduated so far, and they're all working. And in fact, we met 2 of those students in the last 2 webinars, Majd and Salman, who are, one is working as an anaesthetist and the other one who's working in research at the moment with a view to a career in neurosurgery. We're expecting 6 more to graduate this year. And the budget that we've spent with the help of, well, this is budget that we have elicited from the Madrina Trust, is in excess of £500,000. So this is in addition to the budget that I spoke to you about earlier. So this comes from our partnerships rather than from the direct funding that we received from you. So yes, we are about £15,000 short of the more ambitious projects that we have accepted we are able to deliver this year. But in addition to that, in the past, as again, if you joined us during the Al-Quds webinar, we spoke about one of the refurbishments of the anatomy labs that we were able to pay for from FQMS, and that cost about £150,000. The similar refurbishment was promised to the Azhar University in Nablus, but we were only able to deliver one, and the second device, the second anatomy table, would cost another about £70,000. So this is now our ambition, is to try and raise that in addition to the project that I spoke to you about. Now, I say this, and of course, we have guests from Gaza today, and the question to some will be, well, why aren't we delivering the same project to Gaza? Delivering a digital tool of this type to Gaza is virtually impossible. In the past, when we've tried to get even simple tools into Gaza, the checkpoints on the Israeli side meant that they were delayed for 6 to 9 months, and something which has the sophistication of these kind of devices will just not get in, unfortunately. So, again, at the end, I would like to thank the trustees who have really designed these webinars for you over the last 3 months. We will, of course, continue with some different types of programs in the coming few months, and that hope in the next year we can all meet all together face to face. I'm very excited about some of the speakers we have today, but particularly Ghassan and David, because I know them both as colleagues and as friends, and people who I look up to. And Ghassan and I go back many, many years, and I say, Ghassan and David, you're very welcome, as all our guests are. So I will now hand over back to Yasmin, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Khalid. Our next speaker this evening is Dr Ghassan Abu-Sittah. Dr Abu-Sittah is a British-Palestinian plastic and reconstructive surgeon, currently holding a post as a senior clinical lecturer at the Centre of Blast Injuries at Imperial College University in London. He is also a trustee of Medical Aid for Palestinians, which works to ensure the health of Palestinians living under occupation and as refugees. Dr Abu-Sittah has worked extensively as a surgeon in war zones such as Iraq and South Lebanon, as well as during the 3 wars in the Gaza Strip. We're very fortunate to be able to hear from him today in what I'm sure will be a very inspiring talk. Please welcome Dr Abu-Sittah.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation, and thank you, Khalid, for inviting me to be amongst friends and amongst colleagues. As Khalid said, Khalid and I were schoolmates together and made the trip in '88 together to come and study medicine in the UK. David and I met for the first time fleetingly at the very beginning of the war on Gaza in 2014. I had just arrived in the burns unit at Shifa Hospital, and David was on his way to Al-Quds Hospital, where he was working with the ICRC, and Dr Fadel and I shared adjacent operating rooms at the Baptist Hospital in Gaza the day after the massacre of the move of the American embassy to Jerusalem, the eve in which 2,600 Palestinians were wounded in under 4 hours. And such was the pressure that the following day, a lot of the patients had been moved to the Baptist Hospital, and I met Dr. Fadel, had the honor of meeting him because his room was next to my operating room on that morning. First of all, Al-Quds Foundation and the medical schools in Palestine and its support for these medical schools continues a tradition that was interrupted in 1948. Very few people know, but in 1948, when the Palestinians were expelled from their homeland, there were 70 Palestinian doctors working in Palestine. Some had graduated from the American University of Beirut, which was called the Syrian Protestant College. Some had graduated from St. Joseph in Lebanon, and others had graduated from Asitana, which is in Turkey at the moment. And so the tradition and the aspiration of the Palestinian people to build a vibrant health system and to build a medical profession had happened prior to the expulsion of the Palestinians from their homeland. And then that expulsion, what we call the Nakba, interrupted that, but it then sent the Palestinian medical profession in a multitude of trajectories. Like many, my father graduated from what was then King Fuad University in Cairo at the end of, at the beginning of the 50s, and then moved back to Gaza to work for the recently established UNRWA, which was the UN Relief and Works Agency looking after Palestinians and Palestinian refugees and providing care, while others pursued medical education either in Egypt or in Lebanon and carried on this tradition. And it wasn't really until the first medical schools were set up again in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip that we were able to restart this tradition and the stream that had been interrupted very cruelly by the destruction of our societies and the expulsion of our communities from our ancestral homelands. And that is why it is critical that the work that Al-Quds Foundation does in supporting these medical schools, in creating a Palestinian cadre of health professionals, of doctors who are embedded within their communities, within their societies, who are able to serve their people throughout the hardships. I recall repeatedly running into medical students in the 2008 war, 2012 war, and 2014 war, who had come in to Shifa Hospital and Al-Auda Hospital to work as volunteers during the wars. These medical students, unfortunately, see what very few other medical students see in their training and have to learn skills and knowledges that are for many skills that doctors pick up very late in their career. How to put in a chest drain because you have a patient who's had a puncture lung from a shrapnel, how to resuscitate a blast injury patient, the importance of doing a lot of the procedures that most surgeons, luckily around the world, only read about, are actually a repeated part of the lives of medical students in Palestine. And one of the things that will always leave me humbled is how during these wars, my colleagues whom I had worked side by side with were not able to find out whether their own families had been targeted in the wars. And I remember one of the anesthetists at the burns unit in Shifa Hospital during the 2014 war, in the middle of the surgery, receiving the news that his brother and his brother's whole family had been killed when their house had been targeted by the Israeli Air Force. And he chose to carry on and said to me that this is the best that he can do for them at the moment. It's under these difficult circumstances that we witness this miracle of medical education in Palestine under very, very difficult circumstances. Medicine, as anyone who's gone through it, is hard enough to go through, but to go through it when you live in a society where there is an intentional policy to create a human catastrophe, where you know that the siege that's been inflicted on Gaza, the aim of it is to diminish the quality of people's lives, including the lives of the students that we're trying to help and their teachers and trainers. And to do that in a society where there's almost 2/3 unemployment, because that is the policy that is aimed at breaking the spirit of the Palestinian people, particularly in Gaza. It is miraculous that anybody finds the energy or the time to study or to prepare for medical school under these circumstances. But what is miraculous is the ability of steadfastness of our people in Gaza, amongst them the medical staff, who not only the students who are able to study under these difficult financial and social and economic circumstances, and their teachers and their mentors who are able to deliver the much needed care to our people, but also the much needed education to their students. We remain humbled at their perseverance, and whatever we can do pales into comparison to the daily sacrifices that they make day in, day out, so that despite the fact that we are still the weaker side, despite the bleakness of our situation as Palestinians, 70 years on, that settler colonialism has failed to eliminate us. Academics who've studied settler colonialism across the globe and across history describe the logic of elimination that's intrinsic to settler colonialism. Well, settler colonialism might not have yet been defeated in Palestine, but it had yet to defeat the Palestinian people, and part of them, and a critical component of them, is the medical establishment and the young men and women who aspire to become part of that medical establishment. I won't take much more of your time, and thank you again very much for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abu-Sittah, for that inspiring talk. We will now have a short break for 5 minutes with some more beautiful music from Dr. Dalal Abu Amne. Dalal, who is from Nazareth, is not only a talented singer with a beautiful voice, but also produces much of her own music herself. She has revitalized Palestinian folklore music with emphasis on glorifying the role of the elderly Palestinian women, whom she often features in her musical projects. Her other passion, besides music, is science, having earned a BA and subsequently a PhD in neuroscience from the Israel Institute of Technology. We hope you enjoy this beautiful piece called Biladi, which translates to My Country.
الروع ما تغنى فؤادي بلادي
So that was the amazing Dr. Fadel Abu-Sittah singing Biladi, which translates as my country. Hi everybody, my name is Electra. I am one of the new trustees to FQMS as well. I also joined this year. And I would like to welcome our next speaker, the stand-up comedian Imran Yusuf, who's famous for his stand-up comedy that seamlessly weaves socio-political satire with real, heartfelt and introspection. In 2017, Imran went out to the occupied territories with fellow British comedian Jeremy Hardy and made a short film about the condition of healthcare under occupation. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Imran.
Amazing. I think I'm live. Is that right? Can you hear me? Feel free to unmute your microphones. I'm going to attempt to do comedy over Zoom. If you can laugh, that will really help my job. Let me know that I'm doing well. If you don't laugh, it lets me know that I need to work harder. So hello, I'm Imran.
Hello.
Hello. It's an absolute pleasure here to support FQMS. I've just had to follow a very talented singer who's also a neuroscientist. Unfortunately, I don't have those kind of credentials. I'm a high school failure who went off to run his mouth off in comedy clubs and make a living from it. So I hope that will do for the esteemed guests who are here today. I'm just going to try and tell you a few funny things about my experiences in being involved with Palestinian charities, and hopefully that will entertain you and bring some levity to this evening, because I know it's a very serious subject. So let's get this started. First of all, thank you very much. Salam, shalom, good evening and welcome. Salam obviously is the Arabic greeting. I'm saying shalom just in case there are any Hebrew speakers here tonight. And well, definitely Mossad are hacking this Zoom call, we know for a fact. So shalom to them if they're watching. Maybe they're there in Tel Aviv just going, I like this guy, right? And so yeah, welcome. That it's an honor to support FQMS and the important work that they do for Palestine. Now, I've been to Palestine twice in my lifetime. Once in 2006 as part of an extended Umrah. If you don't know what an Umrah is, it's like Hajj, but off-peak. Yeah, it's a lot cheaper. You get cheaper prices, less people, and it's a better bargain. So I'd highly recommend it. And so first I went to Jerusalem to visit Al-Aqsa, and then via a bus to Jordan, I got to Saudi Arabia, because unfortunately you still can't do direct flights. And then 11 years later, in 2017, I went to Palestine again with Medical Aid for Palestinians, who I know who are in this call today. And I went alongside the late Jeremy Hardy, so we could see the various medical and educational projects Matt have across the West Bank. And as you can imagine, on both these trips that I made, upon landing in Tel Aviv, I was taken aside for extra questions by the Israeli Ministry of Defense, right? Because as you know, they are highly paranoid. Somebody in the wider world might not totally agree with the actions of their government. Yeah? And as you know, today, criticism of Israel can be construed as an actual crime and you could find yourself facing a harsh sentence in Facebook jail. I'm sure some of you know what this is already. It's a harsh punishment of modern times, going to Facebook jail, being silenced on social media for your beliefs, especially for something as important as wanting universal human rights for everyone. And that's what I'm most interested in, is universal human rights for everyone, not a single person excluded anywhere on earth, or wherever humans may be in the future, like on Mars. But before Elon Musk and NASA can claim that as their holy land, we could achieve universal human rights on Earth at the very least. Right? But how do we achieve that? How can we bring people together? I thought the World Cup would be ideal, but as soon as Palestine gain a free kick, the Israelis will build a wall, and then we'll just be back to square one. I thought some of you might like that. Thus, it's definitely important to highlight the plight of Palestinians living under occupation, under an observably increasing apartheid. I'm hopeful for Palestine because over the long term, injustice cannot be upheld. Look at me, for example. I'm a naturalized British citizen who was raised in Britain. but I was born in Kenya and whose ethnic origins are rooted in India. I'm a byproduct of the British Empire, from a colonized people, a subjugated people, to a naturalized citizen today. And today I'm speaking to you from here, from my city, which is Londonistan, right? Yes, that's what it's called, Londonistan. It's the capital of Great Britain. This is what we're calling it now, right? The colonized have become the colonizer. Before, the Abrahamic religions were the Dharmic religions, and we'd warned everybody about karma, but they didn't listen to us. Right? Now, the word Londonistan has emerged in recent times because of the demographic change in the capital. Right? Those of us who are part of the minority have now begun to become part of the majority, and those who are in the majority have slowly become the minority. And this raises concerns for some people. Of what this means for the city's future, its identity, its culture, its language, and its way of life. And if you feel that way, it doesn't make you a bad person for speaking up. I understand. But part of me looks up to my ancestors in the heavens and says, we have taken the capital. See, it was all about the long game. Gandhi knew exactly what he was doing. Peace, non-violence, get a passport. Have you tried yoga? Often when I do this joke in a comedy club, most people laugh, but there's always somebody going, this is how it starts. Right? So ultimately, what can this mean for Palestine? That those who endure hardship shall eventually get the liberty they deserve. Justice unites a just people. And I'm always impressed to see the number of Israeli and Jewish individuals and organizations who speak up for Palestinians and who do so at the cost of receiving criticism themselves. Now, fortunately for me, because I live in a multicultural Britain, I have access to all kinds of people whom I can meet and have tea with. So I went to visit the Jewish Museum to learn about the people that I know very little about outside of their acknowledgement in the Quran. And whilst at the Jewish Museum, I learned a lot about Jewish history, particularly of that in Britain. And at the end of my visit, I thought I should buy a souvenir from the gift shop. And for some reason, I settled on this, an Orthodox rubber duck. These are being sold in the Jewish Museum. This is a real legit thing, right? It's pale. It's an Orthodox. Look at it. It's an Orthodox duck, right? You can buy this in the Jewish Museum in London. I highly recommend it. It's a bargain, right? I'm just going to prepare you now for. So what I thought, it's made me think. It's made me think that we need to up our game. That Muslims, we need to up our game. I mean, caricatures are not something we take to very well, but there must be room for improvement. I mean, if the Jews can have an Orthodox rubber duck, surely we can have something like, I don't know, a swan in a hijab. Right, there we go. Maybe they can become friends. An Orthodox dog, a swan in a hijab. Now, I'm hoping you find this funny. Please don't issue a fatwa or halakha on me, for God's sake, right? I mean, if there was, then maybe I can broker peace between Israel and Palestine by virtue of being an offensive Indian who brought these two people together, right? And if I can bring people together, then perhaps I can at least be better than those who seek to divide us. And this has been especially relevant in recent times with divisive demagogues who cause so much trouble. But he and his mail order bride have been evicted from the White House, so perhaps things can get better, right? I was never a fan of Donald Trump. But just before he became president, he said something that upset a lot of Muslims in that certain mosques should be put under surveillance. And this really upset us. I mean, we got really angry, but I listened really carefully to what he was saying. And I'm afraid that I had to agree with him, right? Not certain mosques should be put under surveillance. All mosques should be put under surveillance, right? Mainly because after Friday prayers, we want to know what's happened to our shoes, yeah? Hey, look, these aren't even mine, yeah? I knew they belong to, but I've got them now, right? And after you've had to walk home in your socks one too many times, maybe you'd be feeling just a little bit extreme. Well, I'm glad that last one got a laugh because that was officially like the last joke. Right? Thank you so much for having me and for the great work and supporting the great work FQMS have done, and also that MAP do. Please continue supporting the work. And it was a great privilege to go out there with MAP when I went in 2017. When people, I think those who are still kind of uncertain on where they stand on the Israel-Palestine conflict, when they get to go and see the impact it has out there, it really opens their eyes that we're a single family on this planet, and we have to learn to communicate in such a way that we can dissolve dissolve these conflicts. And one of the ways that we can do that is through the important work that FQMS and MAP do in highlighting the needs of the Palestinians. So thank you very much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imran, for making us all laugh. I can't imagine it's that easy doing it to a bunch of Zoom screens, but I could definitely see a lot of laughing faces in there. So I'm now going to introduce our next speaker, the renowned David Nott, a world-renowned war surgeon who takes unpaid leave every year to go and work in conflict zones around the world, away from his day job at 2 London hospitals. And in 2015, David and his wife Ellie set up a foundation supporting surgeons in developing their own skills in war zones. This evening, David will be giving us a bit of a glimpse into his time living in or working in Gaza with the ICRC in 2014. So without further ado, over to you, David.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. And how can I follow what's been happening? But I'll try. Some of the slides, I have to say, are a bit gory because it is about war and it is about what happened in 2014. And I'm just going to share this screen with you if I can do that. And hopefully you'll be able to see this screen. So for many, many years, I've worked around the world with various aid agencies. And in 2014, I got a call by the ICRC to go to Gaza for the war that was happening there. And I went right at the very beginning and stayed for around 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks there. This is the International Committee of the Red Cross Gaza office where we all met right at the very beginning. And I have to say that it was a really tense moment, really, going into Gaza. The ICRC the ICRC have worked in Gaza for many, many decades and provide a great service. But it's very unusual to provide surgical teams into this sort of war zone. And it really was a war zone. And the ICRC also managed the Palestinian Red Cross. They managed all the ambulances. And it was fantastic to see the ICRC and Palestinian people together working hand in hand to make this all really work. But of course, here you can see an ambulance that's been blown up. And the ICRC have a very mandate really that healthcare in danger, it's a matter of life and death, and violence against healthcare workers should never occur. In 2008, when the ICRC were there, they documented that white phosphorus was used. In 2014, when I was there, we saw flechette cells being used, which are very dangerous and horrible little things. They fire little arrows and cause problems, and here's a child having affected. So what's the most incredible thing was in Gaza was that every day we would have on our mobile phones, the whole of the ICRC would have this coming up, 102 injuries, blah, blah, blah. And I worked in the Shifa and I also worked in various other hospitals over my time there. And you can just see how fantastic they really had got it all together. Here's a gentleman right at the beginning here who's in charge of the triage at the Shifa hospital. And he's really in charge working out where the patients are going to go. He's working out who's the most seriously injured, who will require urgent treatment, who will go where, and so on and so on. So here he is with a significant injury coming in. He's stopping them. The guy is giving a handover. What's the injuries? Okay, he needs to go to theatre straight away, so he needs to go to the left. And so he's in charge of that one. And so everything is documented and gunned down. So another little girl comes in, she's a walking wounded, so she goes to the right. And it just went on and on like this. And I've got some pictures which just show what it's like at the Shifa at the height of all these injuries coming in. And you can see I was so amazed at the doctors and nurses and everybody, the medical students who you've just heard about as well now, how incredible they all were in helping with this really mass casualty on a daily event. And so I walked with my camera. You can just see here all the theatres are being used. There's patients stacked up to do various surgeries on, and every person was mobilized 24 hours a day, non-stop throughout the whole of the injuries. And sometimes there was 2 or 3 operations going on at the same time. And some of the injuries were awful. If you want to look away, this is a man who's had his arm blown off, which was brought in. And you can see that we used to work together as well. Here's me operating on a leg at somebody's, and then you've got somebody operating on the abdomen, somebody operating on the head, simply because these patients were coming in so rapidly and needed urgent treatment on all their 3 regions at the same time. And we'd all get together and we would all decide what to do to try and get the patients through in the quickest possible time for their injuries. But one night I remember sitting in the ICRC residence, never hearing before such enormous thunder, basically, of the bombardment into Gaza, which was just something else. And we all went down into a bomb shelter, and we were there all night as these bombs were just coming in. And this is another picture which was taken as well, just to show what it was really like. We moved on. Also, I worked in various other hospitals around Gaza. And again, in another hospital here, you can see a shell had landed in the hospital itself, through the walls into the intensive care building, killed some patients and also a nurse, and so on. And again, the staff were resilient to the core. Everybody was just there all the time for their patients. And here you can see an arm being, a patient being blown off. And then most of the injuries were bomb injuries. There were blast injuries. And of course, I'll just give you a little bit of thing. What is a blast? Here I am in Syria, watching a bomb being dropped onto a town in Aleppo. And you can see what actually happens with a blast injury. So first of all, you get the primary effect of the shock wave. And this is the shock wave coming. There's intense damage. And then you get the effects of shock wave, then fragmentation. This thing called the blast wind, which is the wind that goes in following a vacuum effect of the blast wind. And then you get burns and so on and so forth. So if you have a primary blast injury, £1 per square inch will blow out your windows, £5 per square inch will blow out your ears, £15 per square inch will cause severe lung problems. And that does that by a thing called spalling forces. So the shock wave goes through your lungs and goes into an area of high density, which then goes into an area of low density. And that's why you start coughing up blood. You sometimes have no effect on your body at all. It's just the shock wave that will kill you. And the closer you are to the bomb, the shock wave is worse. And so you come in with people with blast lung, that's what the blast lung effect is. And then secondary fragmentation, again, patient in Gaza with lots of fragmentation injuries from the injuries. And here you can see that man again. And how did he get his traumatic amputation? It was probably the shock wave caused a fracture. And then the blast wave lifted him up and threw him against the wall and his arm came off. And then of course the quaternary incendiary device. Again, this little child in Gaza, most injuries are the combinations of all categories of blasts. So you've got this little child here who had a blast injury to his lungs, so he needed ventilating. He then had fragmentation injuries all over his body. He then had the effect of the blast wind, which fractured his leg, and incendiary, which caused burns over him. And there were so many patients and so many injuries like this that had an enormous amount of fragmentation. This is a famous little girl that I operated upon, and I'm sorry if it's a little bit bad, but this is exactly what happens. So this little girl had fragmentation injuries to her abdomen, her bladder, her spleen, her stomach, her colon. So she needed to have an emergency procedure. Not only that, fragmentation had gone into their arm as well, so she cut off all the blood supply to her hand. So it took us quite a bit of time to put her together. And there's a graft that we put into her arm. And there she was about 3 days later, really satisfying to be able to save somebody's life, because you've got all the skills to do it. And again, when we were in Gaza, the bombs were just pouring in all the time. And one of the most amazing things was that there was this little girl who was working, who had a hole in the heart, who was very cyanotic, which means she was blue all the time, who needed oxygen. And they couldn't get enough oxygen to her at all. And basically Chain of Hope, which is a British charity run by Magdi Yaqub, had agreed to take her from Gaza to the UK for treatment. but they couldn't get her out of Gaza. It was impossible to move her. And that was the beauty really of then the PCRF, the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, working with the International Committee of the Red Cross. We decided, and I was leaving that day, so I said, well, why don't I take her back if the ICRC and PCRF and Chain of Hope can get together? But even still, that was more difficult. So in fact, the Sun newspaper got involved, and this is us leaving now Gaza with her. This is going through one of the checkpoints and trying to get out of Gaza with her. And you can see here how poorly she was, and we managed to get her out of Gaza. And there she is there. And that's her with me in the back of the vehicle. And then the Sun newspaper was able to help trying to get her out of Gaza as well. On the plane, she had a cardiac arrest, which was satisfactorily sorted out. And here's her getting off the plane. There's her having her operation at the Brompton. And there she is about several days later. So it's amazing how all the charities work together to help this little girl from Gaza. An amazing thing, really. And then you might wonder to yourself, well, all this work that you do, what's it in aid of? What do you learn from it? Well, I run this course called Surgical Training for the Austere Environment, where I've been to so many war zones. And so we use the experience to train other people, and we train people on a 5-day course, how to manage all the injuries. And we train them on cadavers, but we also run another course called Hostile Environment Surgical Training course, and we've run this course all the way around the world. We've been to Gaza and we've learned from Gaza ways to do it. And in fact, we have this models which we take with us, which this is a model that is with our foundation, which we now take all the way around the world. It has all the injuries on it, which we train. And here we are in the Yemen in January of last year, before COVID starting, and training the surgeons there. It's a really good model. It does things like skin grafts. This is not real, so it's taking a skin graft from a silicone area, and all the surgeons have a go at doing it. They all have a go at operating, and we do obstetrics and gynecology and so on. Teaching all the surgeons how to do things, how to do ultrasound scans and so on. As I said, we have been to Gaza. We went at the very beginning when we first started doing this hostile environment surgical training, and I am looking forward to coming back to Gaza with all our equipment, and we can run another course again to show the surgeons in Gaza what we have learned, how to train surgeons and the best way how to do it. We teach surgeons all the techniques that's necessary for their war injuries. And there we are. And I think I've just done 10 minutes, and this is me in Gaza saying thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, David. That was really, really incredibly powerful and humbling to hear about all the amazing work that you and your foundation has also been doing over the years. For anyone who hasn't read The War Doctor, I highly recommend it. You have a lot more of these insights throughout the book. And just a quick note that David and Ghassan will both be available for a few questions at the end of the talk. So if any of you have any, please jot them down and you can ask them then. So I would now be, sorry, just to round off the talk, we will be going on to, we have got the pleasure of introducing the Dean and Vice Dean of the Islamic University of Gaza, Dr Fadel Naim and Dr Anwar Al-Shaikh Khalil, who will be speaking with some of the students in Gaza. We did have a video to show of the university, but unfortunately technology has not really been working on our side. So we've decided that it's probably better not to show the film, and we'll get straight into the conversation. So we'll first go over to Dr. Fadel now.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am very proud to be with you and honored to talk to all of you, and thanking you for inviting me to talk and introduce our faculty of medicine. In short, our faculty of medicine at the Islamic University was established in 2006 in very difficult circumstances, but with the help and support of our friends all over the world. especially in UK and in special the FQMS, we could reach our goals, establishing a very successful faculty. We started in the beginning with small numbers of students, about 50 students every batch, and with the time we increased the number. Now last year we accepted about 150 students. Till now, since the establishment, we could about 450 students graduated from our faculty. Many of them are now all over the world, making their specialty in different countries, in UK, in USA, in Turkey, in Qatar, in Jordanian. We made use of different ways to develop our faculty, especially through the feedback of our friends who visit us in many times from Oxford University, from FQMS, Al-Quds Foundation, and other places of the world, and gave us feedback about our students, about our teaching methods, and we changed this in all the time. We have now the 5th curriculum now is used, the 5th edition of our curriculum. In the last one, we put the IFOM exam. This is an international exam held by the NMBE, the American Association for Examination, as a must for our students. Every student has to finish the IFOM basic after the 3rd year, and IFOM clinical after the 6th year before graduation, so we can compare our results with all the students in the world. I would like to talk shortly about the difficulties with teaching during the COVID epidemic. As all, like every place in the world, in Gaza we have also this problem, but maybe we are lucky because of the siege. We had time to plan better than the other place in the world. The first epidemic was in August 2020, as with delay 5 months or 6 months delay after all of the world. We practiced integrated system between online teaching. Online teaching, that means recorded videos, Zoom meetings, online exams, and also face-to-face teaching with adherence with the all restrictions given by the MOH and Higher Education Ministry, small groups, and we divided all the groups in 2 or 3 groups to have more place for little number. And in the hospitals, for a time, we couldn't continue our teaching there because of the lockdown, and after that, because the Ministry of Health didn't allow us to do that. In the last months, we could return to the hospitals, and we have very small groups, 3 to 4 students in each group, and we multiplied the places for training. Our students are trained in the MOH hospitals in different places. We multiplied the places for training. We started to train our students in other places, which we didn't do that before. So we can manage this. We also bought the at least required skills to be learned by the students, and we try all the time to stick on that, so we can guarantee that the students can get the best education in this time. But still, it is difficult to say that we could overcome this problem, because, as you know, it's not easy to have enough patients to deal with more cases, because in a time all the hospitals in Gaza were filled with COVID patients, and we couldn't have different cases in different specialties. The other thing I would like to talk about I would like to thank all the friends in the UK, especially Al-Quds Foundation, for their support and for their help to our needy students, because the biggest problem in Gaza is the poverty and the unemployment because of the siege and because of the political situation. Many of the people lost their jobs, and many of students couldn't continue their study because they wasn't able to pay the fees for the university. I think it was a very big and very crucial to help them, and it was a very big step done by the FQMS to help many of our needy students to be able to continue their study. Therefore, I thank all of you and thank of all supporter of Gaza and supporter of the University of Gaza. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fadel. We'll now hear from Dr. Anwar Al-Shaikh Khalil.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, my friends. Just in the few minutes, I will speak quickly about the challenges in our medical school in the Islamic University of Gaza, because many of the things are covered already by Dr. Fadel. Everybody knows the situation in Gaza, the situation of the problems during the siege, the frequent closure, and the very difficult financial situation there. This is reflected in all the day life of everybody here in Gaza, but again, also affected the universities and the medical education. The level of the university, also our university has a big financial problem. Many times they cannot pay even the salaries for the employee because they depend nowadays only for the students' fees to cover the salaries, but many of the students are not paying even the fees, and also they don't have money to cover the equipment, either to bring in new equipments or to replace the old ones. At the student level, of course, many of the students cannot pay the fee, cannot pay the transport to reach the teaching hospital, cannot buy books. And again, they suffer too much from the electricity, the problem of the electricity here in Gaza. And many times we have to repeat the examinations, the electronic examinations, especially at time of COVID-19. And also because of the financial situation, very difficult for them to travel outside for the medical elective courses. We have another challenge because nowadays, as Dr. Fadel mentioned, the number of the students is increasing. And by increasing the number, we need more equipment, more teaching rooms, even very difficult to find places, more places in the hospitals to train these medical students, and we need more trainers as well. Really, we depend, as Dr. Fadel mentioned, on the help and support of our friends, especially many thanks for the FQMS. They are doing their best to minimize the problems in our schools. I will mention quickly, about the fields of support of the FQMS to our school. This Madrina scholarship, through Madrina scholarship, and we have some of the students are with us now. The bursaries, they are supporting the transport of the students to our teaching hospital. They support also, they helped us to buy some of the equipment and mannequins for our skill lab. They supported, the visits of doctors and students also to go for the international medical conferences or training courses outside. The most important is about the visitors from outside. We used to have visitors from different countries, visitors from Oxford every year. A team is coming to Gaza, and they train our medical school and Azhar medical school students in the hospitals, and they are in the afternoon in our skill lab. They train both of them from Azhar and Islamic University side by side in our skill lab. Again, we have visitors every year from other places. The Scottish team, I can see Dr. Colin Cooper here. Welcome, Dr. Colin. He was coming with the team from Scotland, Moira and her team, and they are giving complete course every year to our medical students, and also like the palliative care, infection control, patient safety, and so on. We have teams coming from the Royal College educating the educator courses, and we have other teams even from the USA training for the advanced cardiac life support and so on. This, of course, the support for these visitors is very important for us to improve the education in our school. Again, the FQMS is supporting the external examiners who are coming to participate in our final OSCE examinations. Thanks to Dr. Khalid, 2 years back, he visited us with Nick Maynard and Anas, and they really, we benefit too much from their participation in the OSCE of the last year, surgical OSCE, I mean. We benefit too much really from that experience, and we hope to continue. Again, this year, a new thing, they supported the teaching fellow for all the medical schools, and these teaching fellows, they participated in the clinical training of our students, and again, they were responsible to do some researches and clinical audits that will help to improve the medical education in our school. And lastly, I will speak briefly about the postgraduate study. Before in Gaza, we had before the language barrier, English language barrier, but nowadays our graduated medical students who finished even the Palestinian Medical Council residency program, they have English language certificates, and they are good in English. I hope this program will be extended to Gaza Strip in the future. I will be ready for any question. Thank you very much.
Dr. Anwar and Dr. Fadel, thank you very much for your talk. As I said, I've had the pleasure of meeting you on a couple of occasions on my trips to Gaza, where we saw what the supporters of FQMS are able to help with. And I think I've also met some wonderful students of yours, both in fact in Gaza and here. We have some here in the UK at the moment who've done very well. And there's a well-publicized story of one of your graduates who's now matched as a surgeon elsewhere as well in the US. So I think you've got some very high quality students generally in Palestinian medical schools. And before I open this up to perhaps some audience questions and participation, I'd like to first of all invite the students. Now we have 2 students from Al-Azhar and 2 students from the Islamic University. And we have Asma Abu Hamada, Haytham Shaybar, Shahad al-Sha'ir, and Hisham Abu Amro. I think Hisham might have dropped off. Now, one of the problems obviously we have with the connection with us is that the power is a problem, power supply is a problem, electricity is not reliable, and I'm sure that you don't have the 4G that we have luckily here in the UK. So I think we have to bear that in mind. I think Hisham has just joined us. So I would like to first of all just open up to Asma. Asma, if you wouldn't mind going through just giving us an introduction about yourself, some of the background, and after Asma, we'll move on to Haytham perhaps, and then we'll move on to the students and open up to discussion. So Asma, over to you.
Hello everyone, it's nice to be with you this evening. I am Asma Abu Hamada, a 5th year medical school student at Azhar University, Gaza. I am 22 years old. I live with my family here in Jabalia camp in Gaza. Let me talk about my adventure to be here today at the medical school. It was a long journey. Since I was young, I'm dreaming to be a doctor, but it was difficult or maybe impossible because we are poor. But FQMS Madrina makes it real. So I promised to do this a human job, save lives, and better as better as I can. About university, we always hear at AUG provide healthcare education to the people in the society, in the schools, in the markets, or in the streets. But it becomes restricted or maybe difficult as the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, and repeated lockdowns. We shift to short online videos that make the same thing. Let's talk about me as Asma. I like voluntary work so much, and this was one of the most things that I am passionate about. I did many. The last one was 5 weeks ago. I take a little girl student who needs eyeglasses, but she hasn't its cost. I take her and pay cost for her. Alhamdulillah, by Madrina scholarship, I can pay the university fees, and by FQMS pocket money, I can get what I need to continue, such as books, transportation costs, clothes, and I help my family and the people around me as I can. By COVID-19 pandemic, we are facing several problems, such as restriction of our clinical practice, decreasing the numbers of students at hospitals, and number of hours that we are in hospitals. Universities are closed, or lectures are were online, which is not as good as face-to-face learning. In addition to the what you say, Dr. Khalid, that bad internet connections. Try to keep going despite the surrounding conditions. I practice in several different Zoom meetings about research and its basics with Dr. Usaid Ser, one of your graduated doctors. And actually now I am studying at a course at Babylon's Academy for researchers. My family always supports me because they want me to have a good future, inshallah. Finally, I am so thankful for being a member of FQMS Madrina family, and I hope you continue and do more and more of great human work for a better future for our country and society. Thank you so much.
Asma, thank you for your wonderful words. And Asma and the three other students we have with, in fact, well, Haytham is not a student anymore. He will tell us about himself shortly, but have all been recipients of the Madrina Trust scholarships that I told you about earlier in the program. Haytham, I'd like to welcome you to give us a brief introduction about yourself as well, please.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, welcome and good evening. This is Haytham Shuhaybar, one of the graduated medical students who was supported by FQMS, which actually I'm proud to be a part of this charity. So first of all, I would like to thank you for giving me the chance to speak about my experience and to express my feelings toward FQMS. So as you know, everyone in this life has his own dreams, and everyone also always wishes to these dreams to be established in the real life. And actually one of my dreams was to be a good doctor. And as you know, this in our country, Palestine, especially in Gaza, this was very difficult for me and for the other student in Gaza. So at that time there was FQMS and the Madrinha Trust actually. So I remember one day when Dr. Anwar Al-Shaikh Khalil, Vice Dean of our faculty, called me at that time. I remember that moment when he told me that you will be supported by FQMS conducted through Madrinha Trust. Actually, I was not able to describe my feelings at that time. And this feeling actually is the feeling for the other students in Gaza and in Palestine. So so due to this support, I joined medical school in Faculty of Medicine at Islamic University of Gaza in 2010. And I was supported by FQMS conducted through Madrinha Trust for 7 years. After that, I graduated in 2017, and I got actually higher score due to this support, which qualified me to be one of the teaching assistant in a Faculty of Medicine at Islamic University of Gaza, which also I'm proud to be one of the teaching assistant in this Faculty of Medicine. Now I'm in Qatar. I joined a residency program here in Qatar, a pediatric residency program. At the end of my first year in the program, you know, here in Qatar, Hamad Medical Corporation residency program, one of the biggest center in the Middle East actually, and it's difficult, and this is competitive for the medical students. And Alhamdulillah, I got just sit here in Qatar in this residency program. Finally, thank you FQMS, thank you Madrinha Trust, and I don't want to forget to thank my teacher Dr Fadel Naim, the dean of our faculty, and Dr Anwar Al-Shaikh Khalil, and also many thanks to Dr Anjum Musbahuddin. Actually, Dr Anjum Musbahuddin, this is the first time I met her. I see her on the with the audience here. She was my mentor in Madrinha Trust, and I considered her actually my role model. So thank you, and I'm ready if you have any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Haytham. Thank you very much for your words. And we will open up to questions for those people who want to pose any after the next two students. So I'd like to also welcome Shahad Ashar. Shahad is also one of the students who I'm regularly in touch with. So she is at the Azhar University, and I'm her mentor as part of the Madrina program as well. Shahad, welcome.
Welcome. Good everyone. I hope fine. Everyone is fine. My name is Shahad Kamal. I am a senior medical student at Azhar University. I am student that get a Madrinha Trust scholarship, and I am very happy to get this scholarship. The scholarship is really different in my life after and before I get it. So thank you very much for me and help me every time. Today I will present to you the challenge that face medical student in Palestine. First, I would like to the challenge that face medical student in my college. In the presence of a pandemic, we were the only college that offered on-ground exam, and this led to in the beginning of this year, and will do a delay in our graduation. We are waiting for epidemiological situation to stabilize a little, and then to return to the clinical training, and then to submit the exams, to submit the exams to be up level to the 6th year, and this is really constituted psychologically for us. Secondly, I would like to talk about the change that face medical students in Gaza due to Palestinian condition. There are some circumstances in Gaza, such as military activities, which may be occur every period and which constitute a great psychological burden for us that situate us in fear for a long period, and sometime after a day or 2 days of the end of the military activity, we are facing the scheduled exams, despite the inappropriate condition for studying. And this is a great, really a great and huge challenge faced me and us in my country. Finally, I want to thank you very much for listening to me and also for support me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shahad. And we are very grateful that so far the internet connection has held up. We had a trial run about a week ago. We were worried that the conditions of electricity and so on might be a hindrance, but we're doing well. And I'd like to finally welcome Hisham Abu Amro. Hisham, I think you might have dropped off earlier for that reason, so I'm glad you're back. So Hisham, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you very much. No problem, it's kind of electricity problem, so I went off. My name is Hisham Abu Amro. I am a final year medical student at Islamic University of Gaza City, and I am also one of the mentees of Madrinha Trust, a charity organization. It's really honor for me to stand here and speak in front of these leaders and influencer Palestinian all around the world. Thank you very much for letting a space for medical students to share such a huge event. I'm really thankful for that. Actually, today I would like to speak a little bit about and share with you one of the special moments and the days I'm living in my lives in this period. Actually, as I mentioned before, I'm the final year medical student, standing just one step away from my graduation, which will be held this summer in a couple of months. Actually, I have a mixture of feeling that I don't have any explanation for them. I mean, on one side, I'm looking in the past, remembering that little boy who was entering his first step to the medical school. I remember my first friend I met there, my first lecture I had there, my first exam, my first everything actually. I feel very sick about these moments, and I'm sure it will be a memorable memories that I will never forget. Also, now I feel very happy for what I have reached today. I feel very about all the knowledge, the maturity I have reached and I have achieved today. I'm excited about the next period, but also, to be honest, with little worry and fear about the future, about the opportunity that I will be competing in the future, about all the circumstances, the new circumstances, the new responsibilities that I will be in soon in the future. So actually, it's like a mixture of feelings, all mixed up inside me. But I didn't know which feeling overwhelm which of them. But what I really do know that the final feeling that I'm feeling today is very tasty. I would never like to get out of it at all. So at the end, I would like to really thank you again for inviting us to speak today. I would like to thank my college, my doctors, Dr Anwar Al-Shaikh Khalil, Dr Fadel Naim. I would like to thank Madrinha Trust and FQMS. You were really great supporters for us. And I really would like that the relationship between Madrinha Trust and FQMS and their mentees will never end, even after graduation, so that we can build a huge relationship with each other, more advanced and more cheerful as well. So you gave us, you have been a lovely family for us for a huge period of time, and you gave us a huge hug in very difficult circumstances. So thank you all.
Hisham, thank you. And I think we're all actually very impressed with not just your achievements academically, but actually how well you speak. I mean, to most of us, this is the first time that we communicate to you directly. And I have to say, we're extremely proud of our association. I mean, yes, the group is a charity, but I don't think we ever want the students or any beneficiary to feel that this is anybody being charitable to them. They deserve where they are, and they deserve what achievements they make. So well done to all of you. I'd now like to open up the chat to people who want to ask questions. We've already had a couple of questions which were sent to us in advance. So Colin Green, first of all, Colin, you sent us a message early on today. May I just ask you to unmute and ask your question live?
Oh, I can't remember what I sent.
It was addressed to David.
No, my first question was really to David and to Hassan, who've got all this experience in Gaza in the recent Grand March as well. And what has appalled me is the deliberate maiming of young people instead of killing them. The numbers of people injured is colossal. And I think that's a weapon of war of great disgust to all of us and a shame to humanity. And I'd like to know whether David or Hassan have ever experienced that in their war surgery years abroad. They've both had a lot of experience in the past, and I've never come across it before in studying weaponry and so on. I'm just interested to know if David has come across it before. Deliberate maiming.
Yes, I mean, most of the, years and years ago, it used to be two armies fighting each other. But nowadays, the civilians really take about 70% or 80% of the brunt of the bombardment. And that's the pitiful sight of it all. It's not, politically, civilians are used as a weapon of war. And, if you've got, 500 people killed, then multiply that by 100, multiply that by 1,000, and you've got 5,000 people injured. That's how bad bomb blasts injuries are. So civilians take the brunt of things, and this is a common problem that suffers from all wars around the world, not only in Gaza, Syria, Yemen, you name it. Civilians take the brunt.
I can't talk about the type of the injuries from my experience. It is was that the Israeli occupation intended to injure the people in special places in their body. For me, as a orthopedic surgeon, around the knee or in the ankle region or in the thigh region, to make them disabled for all their lives. It's not only killing them or intending to kill them; they are intending to make them disabled for all life, to be a burden for the whole society in different ways.
Thank you.
First of all, it's fantastic to hear your voice, Colin. Having returned to London in the middle of the pandemic, not been able to see you again. But you're right. So between in the 2 years of the Great Return marches, the Israeli army shot around 8,000 Palestinians. And what makes this different is that the weapon of choice is the sniper, which means that the kind of clinical accuracy and the intentionality and the intimacy of the violence means that there was an intention to mutilate because it is a highly precise weapon. So of the 8,000, 90% were shot in the limbs. And we know that these bullets can travel up to 1.5 kilometers, which means that when fired at someone around 300 meters, the energy still inside the bullet is devastating. I understand that from my colleagues in Gaza that the pandemic made things worse because there are still around 300 of these young men and women who need complex reconstructive surgery, who've had to have their surgery delayed as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the inability of teams to arrive in Gaza to do the treatment. And it is a form of mutilation. And it is an intentional form of mutilation because always in war, the excuse is that these are collateral injuries. But when you specifically choose to use sniper guns, it means that you want to intentionally negate the possibility that this is collateral. So for me, When I saw these injuries, these are the same as the amputations that we saw in the Sierra Leone Civil War, when the RUF used to intentionally mutilate their victims as a kind of biopolitical signifier of their dominance over the victim. Shooting someone with a sniper weapon, knowing exactly where to put the bullet, intentionally to maim them, or to, at a minimum, consign them to 2 years of really complex reconstructive surgery, is a form of mutilation.
May I add one thing, Professor Green, for your question? Of course, there is all the sides that our doctors have explained about the maiming in terms of being a burden on the society, in terms of it being a deterrent, a life example for others not to do all that. But there is a psychological side I want to also stress after Dr. Fadel's brilliant description, and John, which is really psychological. I think these young Israeli soldiers, the snipers, as Dr. Ghassan just described, has a psychological issue of one of the most unique situations whereby the victimizer hates the victim more than the victim hates the victimizers. There is that side of really collective punishment. And because of some rules of engagement, these kids do not pose any threat. So these snipers can actually maim these kids and they think they can get away with it as far as the international community is concerned. So this is just one of the explanations. It's sickness in its worst shape.
So I think we have a question from Colin Cooper. So Colin, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, when I wrote the question in the chat box, I hadn't expected to speak, so I'm delighted to speak, but slightly taken off my guard because the question I've asked is a little bit negative. But I want to preface that by first of all thanking the familiar faces I see around the screen, Dr. Janwar Ibrahim and Fadel Naim. Hello, and I bring fond greetings from Scotland, from Moira Lang, that some students, I hope, will remember. Now, we just heard graphic descriptions of trauma. My own background is I served with the Red Cross in the Cambodian War, so you know how old I am, and I'm not unfamiliar with that. So the topic I asked my question about was palliative care. That will seem almost as if it's a paradox, given the extremity of the injuries, blast and otherwise, that patients have received. But I can remember being taken aside by the head of the services at the Al-Shifa Hospital, who basically, when I talked to him about palliative care, he encouraged me to be bold enough to try to get some teaching on the subject. But it's a complex issue because the way we die is very much a cultural event. It's the way we handle death is cultural. And I don't want to give you a ground lesson on palliative care because I know that Hissam, who was a student, will have had some very fine grounding on it when he was at the Islamic University of Gaza. But my question was a bit negative because if you don't know, within yards, within a few meters of the Islamic University of Gaza, there's a very good, excellent, fine other medical school at the Al-Aqsa Medical School University Hospital. And it seemed very sad to me that trying to get an exchange of information was difficult. Then again, I know Gaza is a special case, but the work by Jerry O'Hara, another Scot in Bethlehem, his work on palliative care barely features. And because eventually, having been an anaesthetist, I entered primary care, I know that at Nablus, the primary care institute there, really is the right setting for palliative care if you do it UK style. Now, I mustn't be a colonial settler. I mustn't tell people in Gaza what to do. But my question really was, could connectivity happen that few meters between the Islamic University of Gaza and the Al-Aqsa Hospital? Could they share information? And maybe they could then achieve the golden well, the great thing in palliative care is pain relief. And many of you may not know that the use of opiates in the community is almost doesn't happen. Whereas in other cultures, particularly in the UK and in Israel, they use opiates. I would just like to put that to the academics here who maybe feel that talking about end-of-life palliative care is a waste of time considering the problems they've got. I would say it isn't. And if you don't listen to me, you would surely listen to Moira Lang when she comes, hopefully when she can come back to Gaza. So thank you to Dr. Anwar Ibrahim and Fadel Naim for allowing me to come to your splendid hospital. And I have to say your students were marvelous. So I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, for that. I suppose, can I open that perhaps as for commentary from Dr. Fadel and Dr. Anwar, because you know your roles, in your authoritative roles in the medical school, do you feel that palliative care and the kind of topics that Colin was talking about, are these something that are high up on your agenda, or do you feel that these are difficult to focus on because of the realities that we live in over there?
Of course, we focused years ago, we started to focus years ago on palliative care. It's a part of our curriculum now. The great team from Moira and Scottish team are coming every year for 1 week and give our students the whole palliative care subject. And we trained our people, also our local people who can do this now by themselves. This year, we did the whole course through Zoom, and the whole team, I think about 20 people from all over the world, helped us and support our students to get this palliative care. The last international medical conference in our faculty, the ninth conference, was 2 years ago, and it was in cooperation with the Scottish team. It was pain management and palliative care in Palestine. And we held many workshops in different places. We established the first palliative care team in Rantiso Hospital. This is the oncology hospital in Gaza. Although it is still defective, we couldn't until now overcome the problem from theory to practice, but we are working on that.
Thank you, Dr. Fadel. Thank you very much. I think we got one more question.
Yes, we have one more question from Dr. Khalil Issa. So if I can ask you to unmute and come up with your question.
Thank you. Can I speak? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm so much proud being here today again, and so much proud of what Dr. Fadel and Dr. Anwar said and described. And my question is to Dr. Anwar, is about the IFOM exam for the basic sciences phase. I'm not sure when you started to do this exam for your graduates from the basic sciences phase and who are transferring to the clinical phase, and did you face any problem for students accepting to go for this exam?
Yes, I think I will start to speak and then probably Fadel will give more details. Really, the IFOM basic, many of our students before they applied and they passed this examination, and even some of them they got full mark. Regarding of course, any new course you added to that curriculum, in the beginning, students, some students, they don't like to have this one, but we convinced them that this is important for you, especially if you will do postgraduate in foreign countries like USA or other or other countries. Regarding the fee, I think it is acceptable. Maybe Dr. Fadel knows more than me about the fees, and Dr. Fadel, you can complete the answer.
As we, is it obligatory? And is it obligatory for your students?
Yes, it's obligatory. It's a must for students. This is the first time this year to have this exam. It is put in the curriculum 3 years ago. As this group of students in third year who will finish the basic science will enter the exam in July. We made a special 1 credit hour for preparing for international exams, and all of our professors and assistants are holding now lectures, special lectures to prepare the students for the exam in different subjects. Of course, as Dr. Anwar mentioned, we have some resistance from the students, but people don't like, they resist every change. But I think it is not for the students, it is for our faculty. It is a possibility to compare and to evaluate us by as our faculty. It's an external evaluation tool, and we are insisting to do that with the students. About the fees, the students pay 100 dinar. This is an 1 hour fees, and we register them for the exam.
Thank you very much.
To pay the fees.
Yes.
Thank you. And just, I think for those of you who may not know, Dr. Isa is the Dean at the medical school in Al-Najah University in Nablus. So it's very good to hear from you, Khalil. We hosted him about a month ago during the webinar back then. I'd like to move on to the next question. Jan Wolf has got a question you'd like to ask. I think, Jan, maybe from what I gather, your question may be something perhaps the students might be able to help out with in terms of their perception. But please go ahead if you unmute yourself.
I am unmuted, yes? You can hear me?
Yes.
I'm finding all this specific, humbling and very inspiring, and there's such a strong sense of the importance of life and a strong sense of purpose in this work, that my question is this. Of course there will be mental health problems in Gaza. Of course there will be mental health problems around the people you work with. But with this sense of purpose, are there the same levels of depression that seems to be gripping the West at the moment? It feels there isn't to me, but is this me being romantic about this sense of purpose and life-affirming work, or not?
Jan, would you like to address this question to a particular person, or shall I open it up to?
Oh, open, please.
Yeah. Do you mind if I perhaps ask someone, maybe Shahad or Haytham, Shahad or Hisham rather, because they're students at the moment. They probably have that zest of excitement, perhaps, and which is overcoming what you describe as a depression, which is overcoming the Western world at the moment. Hisham, how do you feel about this? Do you feel that your ambition, your drive at the moment is stronger than the feeling that we're all trapped, that we are stuck at home, as many of us are, and that hope is not so obvious at the moment?
Well, let me speak in really, and I will tell you the fact, not the diplomatic answer. Actually, to be honest, yes, it will be here in Gaza we face a lot of pressure, a lot of external and internal stressors, and maybe I'm exaggerated when I say that the mood of the students in their final years, instead of being excited and ambitious for their graduation, recently they may face such moods of or swings of depressive mood. I don't know why. Maybe it's a social thing. Maybe it became an inheritance thing that every generation who are graduating or who did graduate transfer to the lower generation the picture of the old circumstances. When we say that, for example, some excellent students, some who have a high academic, who had a high academic results in the college, and they graduated, and then they didn't find a suitable work to a suitable place to work in. Maybe all these things affect the student, and may let him ask himself that okay, after I struggle and face all these stressors and in this era of the medical school, what will I get? Maybe he will ask himself that question, and this is a really source of that swing mode. But finally, we recently also we made a research about that. Actually, about 2 years ago, me and my colleagues, we made a study about the depression and the psychological issues among the medical students in Islamic and Al-Azhar University, and we did present in a medics event 2 years ago. And I can send you the numbers and the issues that we have got there. But thanks God, and we recently, the few months ago, we all collaborate, and we decided not to think about the future, not to think about all the things, not to think behind, just to focus on the recent moment, to focus on our study, to focus on helping each other, to do whatever charity and voluntary work as we can, and let the God decide our future as we deserve.
Hisham, thank you very much for that.
We now have a question from Baroness Jenny Tong, who is also a retired gynecologist. So over to you, Jenny.
Hello, thanks very much. And thank you for a terrific presentation tonight. I have enjoyed it. But I'm very conscious that there was very, very little mention of women and pregnancy and newborn babies and deformities and malnutrition to babies and their mothers. And I just wondered if any work is being done on that, and if FQMS sort of get involved with that sort of work. I do not believe that pregnancy and childbirth is straightforward in Gaza at the moment. I just don't believe it. And we hear lots of horror stories about mothers, losing their babies at checkpoints and babies being deformed or having difficulties after birth. And I just wonder if, perhaps not tonight, but at some stage, whether we could have a session that actually concentrates on that issue. Perhaps I'm being selfish because that's my interest.
Jenny, thank you very much. And I should say, Jenny's really gives us a voice in higher places. So we're very grateful for Jenny's support over a few years now. She attends our dinners and it really is very vocal on the subject that you spoke about. Jenny, I think on behalf of FQMS, I can say, I suppose we haven't been involved to that level on this front, because we tend to channel our work directly through the medical schools, and probably it may be a little bit early at that part of their training in terms of getting that experience and exposure. But I'm no expert on that, and I wonder whether Dr. Anwar, who's a pediatrician, perhaps has a better view on this. Dr. Anwar, what's your feeling about this? Do you feel that this is something that needs more focus in Gaza? Do we need to be looking at this in more detail?
I think we are interested too much really with mothers and babies, and probably here we have the UNICEF, supporting many programs, regarding the mothers in pregnancy, and also regarding the neonates. And there is some program regarding early child development and assessment of the child in frequent visits of the little baby clinic and so on. And we have regular programs. All our NICUs, the neonatal intensive care units now, they are much developed, and all the staff there are trained for neonatal lab support there, and all the staff of the obstetricians also, they have some courses. One course they call it also, and so on. I think there is a big interest in all these subjects. And again, our friends from the Oxford medical delegation team, they are coming usually with obstetricians, and they teach our medical students the skills of obstetrics and gynecology here. But I don't have figures, but I know that many of the studies to improve that is in Gaza, and the UNICEF is supporting these issues too much.
Thank you, Dr. Anwar. And to add to that, Lena, our fellow trustee, has just pointed out and reminded us that we've had 2 gynecology trainees who've come from the West Bank and subspecialized in the UK and gone back and really taken positions of authority there, hopefully who will pass on, propagate the messages of things that they've learned here. So we are hopeful. In fact, that could be a focus for a future meeting. We're very open to any of these suggestions, really, Jenny. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand over now to Yasmin just to wrap up.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to stop there with all the questions. Thank you to Esma, Shahid, Haytham and Hisham for sharing your stories, and to Dr. Fadel and Dr. Anwar for your talks and answering all your questions. We come to the end of this evening's webinar, and on behalf of all of us at FQMS, I would like to thank all our speakers and special guests once again for giving us such inspiring and humbling talks of their experiences in Gaza. Finally, a huge thank you to all of you for joining us in this webinar tonight and all of your generous donations. And thank you to Imran Yusuf for giving us such great entertainment. You can just see how important all the work that you aid in donations and all the money that gets donated to FQMS, and how important it is in helping to continually improve the quality of education for medical students and building the doctors of the future. Thank you again for joining us, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so
You
much.
can unmute if you want to say goodbye or have some final words.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. And
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we say a big hello to Pauline Cutting and Ben. I gather they're here along with
Thank you, Lena.
Great. Hello. Good
Hello.
to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, Lena. Lovely to see
Hi,
you.
Pauline. It was wonderful to see your
Long
name
time.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so
nice to see you back in the
I'm so impressed with it all. I can't believe it. It's been wonderful tonight. Lovely to
Yes.
see you, and Colin.
Hello.
Bye.
Okay, goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Great evening. Thank you.